I did start to go, okay, well, are perhaps these habits that I've had, these sinful behaviors that I've had, are they actually bad?
I don't know. I feel like I needed this season away. We should probably cut that part out. But
To some people, this may sound absolutely insane, and it's
to
just
Lauren 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, even
bonkers.
Yeah, and so, but that's just the reality of where we're.
Hey, we're excited to have you back here on Living Mosaic. I'm Lauren, and this is Ian, and this week we are talking about the messy middle of deconstruction.
Yes, so we are going to be addressing kind of just the journey and the process between what may have been the catalyst to starting your whole deconstruction, all the way through to kind of like, yeah, I don't want to say like where somebody lands at the end, because there's the rebuilding process, and there's so much that there's not necessarily just this linear thing that has an exact, like, this is the middle and this is the
end.
This is when you stop deconstructing and when you start reconstructing or whatever. It's
life is too messy and swirly for that.
The whole point of this podcast, but
weird. Maybe that's intentional.
Exactly. But we do kind of want to discuss our experiences and our journey in the stage of deconstruction, and then we'll kind of get into how we is reconstructed, reintegrated into our faith, and that'll be something that we do a little bit later on. But right now we're going to talk about what we experienced from when we kind of had that moment of going, I don't know what I believe anymore. I don't know what's real. I don't know which way is up, which way is down. And I have to try to figure out and reconcile all of this. And I don't really know where to go from here.
Yeah.
So we'll be discussing that process and just some advice within that, I think.
Yeah, I think what we felt like we needed to hear in that season that we didn't necessarily hear. What we were hoping to have, like who we were hoping to have come alongside us and like walk with us, and like how we survived, like, because at times, like, you're saying like which way was even up, like there were seasons where it felt like we were fully submerged underwater, like being pulled down by like the rip current.
Exactly.
So
yes, so I'll kind of start with my side of it, my experience in that, and then Lauren will share some of hers. But if you haven't heard what was kind of the pivotal moments that brought us to this place, you may want to go back and listen to that. I can give you some better context for all of this. But we're just going to dive in. So kind of after we had the real triggering moment that brought us to question really, like, whether or not we even believe God was real and existed, which is just, it's crazy to, like, even it's so surreal to look back and
it is,
and kind of like be like we were there, but
because he was so real and tangible when we first met, and he has become so real and tangible again, that it feels like a dream that there was
Yeah.
ever a season where we were like, are you even real, God? Like, I don't know.
Yes, and but we were definitely there,
Yeah, we were.
and I think like that's important to say as well is like so often people are like shamed or ridiculed for being there, for getting there, and like that never produces any fruit to sit there and bash people for maybe questioning or going, I don't know if I believe God exists anymore. I mean, it's like it's so much more important to listen to their hurt, listen to their questions, have discussions with them without like this pressure of being like, well, you have to get back into church, you have to believe in God and all of
Without
that.
judgment
Exactly.
of what their faith once was or how they could get to where they are. Because I feel like that was often something we heard, like, well, you just didn't have faith to begin with, though.
Yeah, yeah. All of those kind of things, all those assumptions and judgments, like it just is not constructive. It's not
Yeah.
beneficial. And so it was after that point, and you know, we were really just kind of like, well, we don't know what's real, what is truth, what to believe,
Mm-hmm.
what to think, and to a degree, it's like life obviously continues. We had a family, we have kids, and yeah,
Businesses.
businesses, all of these things, and so like life is continuing along, and we can't just completely shut down and be like, we have to like spend all of
Figure
our
this
time
out.
to figure this out, and so it definitely is. It took a while. It was a long pathway, and
We're talking years.
yeah. So, and that's a huge thing. We'll get into timeline here in a little bit, but uh, for me personally, when I had kind of the questioning of is God actually real, it made me then sit there and question every other thing that I had held to be true before that. Because then it was like, okay, well, if there's no God, then what does marriage actually look like now? What
Mm-hmm.
does raising kids actually look like now? What does sexuality look like now? What does this look like now? What does money look like now? What does success look like now? All of these things suddenly are like these question marks
Yeah.
because, you know, for so long we'd been anchored and tethered to our faith that everything was integrated into that. And
Yeah. The
so,
religious institution had created the framework for us. I don't think it was necessarily even ours when it came to marriage or raising family. It was what the institution had said, this is what it is. So we then molded ourselves to that.
yeah, and in a lot of ways, and we have so much
There's a lot
so
of
much there.
tangents that
Yeah.
could happen.
Yeah, and so that's an important thing, as well in the process is it's like, okay, so, you know, what is teachings and people's theological opinions that need to be looked at, evaluated,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Possibly
can,
dismantled.
yeah, dismantled, and you can come to a new understanding of that based off of truth. Because this whole thing, life in general, it really is. It comes down to the question of like, what is truth?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and if you don't have something to tie you to some foundational truth, it then opens up everything to be, well, what is truth? Is there really truth? What is my truth? All of these concepts, which it really is a logical, it's logical that people get there. It makes sense that you start to question that, and then you start to go, well, I just, I want to believe what I want to believe, and that becomes my truth. That if you don't have that anchor or something to hold you firm to that is truth, then and this is, we're just slightly diving into this. This is a massive thing of the
Yeah.
whole like what is truth, but that really becomes kind of a big discussion within deconstruction. Is you have all of these people that are starting to ask those questions, and the reality is that's instead of viewing it as like this evil postmodernist thought process, we need to go, okay, that is a logical place for somebody to get if they start to question their faith. And so we need to be able to have those discussions. And if somebody comes to you and you are somebody who has a faith, you're in the church or whatever it is, instead of ridiculing or even mocking people for perhaps having those questions of like, well, what is truth, or this is my truth. Be ready to actually have the discussions and have some valid answers and stuff for them, because it really is a logical place to go.
Yeah, and I think when we can have open, curious conversations with people and different faith backgrounds, different places in their journey, we're giving them opportunity to still see goodness and kindness and God through those conversations. But if we shut them down, if we shame them, if we tell them that they're stupid or anything like that, like you've now shut off that communication.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you're told that the reason why you're not in church is because you're bitter and that you're a horrible person because you're bitter, like that didn't go, you know what I really want to do now? Go sit in a church pew.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't.
No. Yeah. And again, like we're not saying to never address certain things that are there, but usually like to bring up something with an individual, usually there has to be a relationship equity there to where you can actually speak into their lives. You can't just go trying to blast people left and right just based off of your assumptions about them.
Yeah.
But back to my story. So
Sorry.
no, I mean, this is good. We're uh, but yeah, so I started to really just question that. I mean, and it definitely in certain areas like our marriage, because it was like, well, like what is marriage? Like is we believe that our marriage vows and covenant was based off of a biblical viewpoint.
Yep.
And so it's like if
we no longer hold the Bible as our central value point,
then
what does marriage look like?
Yeah, like is marriage even valid? Is it something? I mean, do we, to be frank, I mean, it's like, well, then is it like an open marriage thing, or what's even possible? And
what's
I know
allowed?
To some people this may sound absolutely insane, and it's
to
just,
Lauren 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, even
bonkers.
Yeah, and so, but that's just the reality of where we were, and we want to share these things because we want to, first of all, like remove like shame from people who are struggling with these things, asking these questions, and going like, it's valid, like you have a valid reason uh to go here, because at the end of the day, like if you're not really wrestling out what you believe, then your faith won't be that strong. And I'm not saying that everybody has to go to that extreme.
No.
But again, it's like we need to be wrestling through and finding, like, first of all, like, where is our truth rooted?
Yeah.
Is our truth, if we're professing to be a Christian, is our truth actually rooted in the person of Jesus Christ and what he said, and says? And is that really the foundation? Because I think that there's even a lot of Christians that maybe aren't necessarily there, that they maybe believe more in the church itself.
Yeah, the doctrine and the institution, and because the church as it has grown, and there's some beautiful aspects of the fact that it's grown in the way that it has, it's gotten really shiny and pretty, and everything is packaged neatly, and it's really easy to just go, oh, that makes sense, and kind of just take it all in, and you don't even realize you're believing things that aren't necessarily scriptural. I mean, that's definitely where I had landed with a lot of my stuff, because I think I said in the previous episodes of like, my deconstruction wasn't necessarily some like catalyst within the church, but once I started deconstructing, I started seeing all of the poor teachings. I started seeing all the dysfunction for what it truly was.
Yeah.
But it took getting out of it for me to be able to like look back and see.
Yeah, evaluate it. So I mean, with that question of, what do I actually believe? What is truth? I think this is where there's oftentimes the critique of deconstruction that basically it is people who just want to justify or get away with sin.
Yeah.
And there's ways that I can see how that can be a perception of it, because
And even at times, maybe what was happening.
Yeah. I
At
mean,
times.
there's instances, yes, but I think, for me, for example, I did start to go, okay, well, are perhaps these habits that I've had, these sinful behaviors that I've had, are they actually bad? Um, and I think part of what drove me more so to question them was like a feeling of that shame and guilt that has surrounded it. And whenever you have something that you struggle with for a long time, it's like that the shame and the guilt gets overwhelming, and there's obviously like stuff like the shame spirals and all these kind of things that um, whenever you don't actually deal with stuff in a effective, healthy way, that's what you get caught in. And so the churches that we were in didn't really have effective ways other than just pray more and read
Yeah.
your Bible to handle stuff. And so,
Yeah, that's great.
which
Pray in
not, yeah,
tongues.
not to diminish prayer or the scripture at all, but that's a part.
And the role that the partner is given is, well, you should be praying harder and you should speak highly of them as if they are already kind of like manifest the
Yeah,
man you want.
yeah,
I
word of
mean,
faith.
yeah.
So, and so when you have that, and then all of a sudden, the whole reason that you were fighting that, which is your moral standard based off of a faith, is ripped out from underneath you, then it's like, okay, well, maybe that's not that big of a deal.
Yep.
And so it's that easy progression of you reevaluate everything, and then you go, okay, well, like, you know maybe sinning isn't actually bad. Maybe it's really not that big of a deal, and there's not a God who's condemning me for these actions. So maybe it's really not that big of a deal. And
Yep.
and again, like it's not so much that like I was looking to sin, so I walked away from the faith. It was that when I question the faith because of extreme hurt, pain, trauma,
Yep.
we got to remember some of the reasons why we
People.
are where we are
Yeah.
is then it becomes this natural progression that you begin to compromise and just reevaluate. And again, like that in and of itself is not bad.
Nope.
And but it led me into those things further, and again, it ultimately had negative impact on myself, on my marriage, on everything. But it was just this natural
Progression. And it was a
progression.
slow thing too. It
Yeah,
wasn't like overnight suddenly we're like, hey, do we want to have, all of these things as a part of our life? Like
yeah,
it slowly builds.
yeah,
It was like, okay, well, we allowed this one area, we'll allow this area.
yeah,
And I mean, if you're in the church circle, it's what they call like the little foxes that will come and destroy your garden. Like we now have firsthand experience of understanding, like, yeah, it is piece by piece. But when you don't have the faith structure, it's easy to like go down that slippery slope
yeah,
without that being the intent on the start.
yeah, yeah. And so it's kind of one of those things where when anybody who has experienced having shame, condemnation, all of that, your brain and your emotions, that you want to alleviate that, you want to remove that.
Yeah.
And so kind of like when oftentimes when you're in a faith community, and especially um, some that don't have necessarily effective ways of actually leading people through healing, that looks like just the whole try harder method to alleviate your shame. And so then it's like this process of beating yourself over the head with whatever it might be.
A giant Bible.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, exactly. And you're not getting anywhere. And so then whenever all of that is removed, the alternative flip side of trying to stop sinning is just to accept sinning, because you still are fighting to alleviate the shame.
Yeah, and the pain that is what was the reason why you were sinning in the first place. Because usually when we are sinning, it's a response mechanism. We want comfort, we want connection, we want all of these things, and we are choosing to look in unhealthy places.
Yeah, yeah.
And so whenever that faith structure is gone, and when you're in the faith structure and you don't have compassion on yourself, like you just get stuck.
Yeah. So then, like as you're evaluating what is truth, and then you start to compromise in areas, I will say from my experience, there was kind of this momentary relief. There was not the same feelings of shame. It was like, okay, well, we're just kind of existing as humans who are mortal that will eventually die, and it was almost kind of like a degree of nihilism of just nothing matters and everything is going to be destroyed, and so what's the point, mixed with almost like a when you're a mere mortal, every moment is important because it could be your last, and there's no afterlife. So we're seizing the day, and so it's kind of like this weird mix of the two, which I think there was a degree of like we saw as almost had like a romanticism to it, and there's an allure to that, and so to a degree, like aspects of atheism make sense as to why people have that appeal and attraction to it. But the thing is, it was momentary. I will say the shame about stuff didn't leave, because unfortunately we do have these things called consciences, and we
were designed with
have the law written on our hearts, and so it doesn't fix the problem.
No.
And I think that's that's something that's really good to acknowledge. And I know that obviously people can move forward and stuff, and you can sear your conscience and numb that stuff down to where you can continue and go into stuff and it not bring necessarily like the surface level feelings of guilt and shame and all that stuff, but the reality is like it's still there. The shame, the knowing that you are not being the person that you were designed to be.
Yeah.
It is there, and we can't escape that. And I think that's the thing, is that that's why I feel like people who are so off into certain things, like they ultimately are miserable because they know that this isn't right. And not even like, oh, I'm doing something bad, but it's just like, I am not living as the person I was created to be, even if they would never in their life use the word created because they don't believe in a creator, but still it's like, that is there. You can't escape it. And that remained. And so, despite compromising and almost going,
despite our best efforts to walk away,
and
to live how we wanted to live, it just didn't work.
And again, it wasn't like that was an instantaneous response. I mean, we try, we continued going to church, sometimes for reasons of just like, we need a break from the kids, we need them to be in
the classes,
Sunday school, whatever it is that they and whatever that word is.
And sometimes we'd go to service, and a lot of churches have coffee bars. Sometimes we just go to
the
coffee bar.
Sit in the coffee bar. Just being honest, and we were not consistent at all, and it was a fight. I mean, I don't know how many times we had like massive blow-ups with the kids or each other.
And that's like a cliche thing that you're told growing up, and it's a cliche thing that I may have experienced growing up.
Well, Satan's just trying to keep you out of church, so he's gonna...
And honestly, when we stopped trying to go to church, it actually became
infinitely worse.
Well, yes, it became infinitely worse, but like it also became easier at first.
Yeah. Like to go back to church?
Oh, well, no. Once we had to go back, it was infinitely worse. I'm saying like life in general, like, and I guess that's the whole thing. Like Satan's trying to keep you out from it, but like I don't know. I feel like I needed a season away. We should probably cut
Yeah.
that part out. But
You saying you needed a season away?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I mean, I think that's a valid thing to say.
we'll leave all this in and y'all get to hear just everything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think we needed a break. I think we needed a season away because it would have been real easy to kind of gloss over everything that was in all the hurt, all the questioning in ways, all of
Yeah.
the kind of going, what do we actually believe? Do
And
we, you know,
I mean, in a lot of ways, the stuff that we now see as toxic
mhm,
teachings, like, you don't. So, family of origin is a term in psychology where it's you don't know something is weird within your family of origin until you're outside of your family of origin because it's what you know.
mhm,
And so, it's not until a friend comes over and goes, "What just happened over there?" And you're like, "That's what we always do." And
yeah,
they're like, "That's weird."
yeah,
Like, it's not until we have an outsider's perspective that we can see it. And so, if you are like completely inundated in the church, you can't necessarily see some of the dysfunction that is currently on display
yeah,
in a bigger, grander scale right now.
yeah,
Um, but we didn't see that 5 years ago.
yeah,
You know, we didn't see what we're seeing happening in the church today 8 years ago
yeah,
when all of this started.
yeah. I mean, because we've literally been a part of
Multiple of the
so
churches.
every church, or aside from where we are now, every church or like small group or any of that that we have been a part of from when we got married has had a, not just like it kind of fell apart, but it has had a massive explosion of like
Full
horrible,
proportions. And the ones that we visited even have had some stuff
yeah,
happen. There's one other that I have not heard in the news yet.
yeah,
And there's
yeah. And I guess we were just we went there some. Yeah, I can't say that like,
and then I mean people that I knew from youth group. Like, I
yeah.
mean, lots of names.
Yeah,
Lots of things.
and so, you know, for us, I believe, and again, I'm not saying that everybody needs to follow our exact pathway and everything, but
No.
we needed a season of not being in the church so that we could heal and so that we could um, actually like fully walk through the valley
Yeah.
and find,
And know the good shepherd on our own.
yeah, yeah, and really like be found, because I think it was in a lot of
Yeah.
ways that was what was needed. And so instead of just kind of, you know, hopping back into some, you know, random flock and getting lost in the fray and really coasting in a lot of ways, I think we
Yeah.
needed to stay in the trench and uh like truly get, in a lot of ways, to the end of ourselves.
I would agree
And
with that, yeah.
uh and so, like, in all honesty, again, we're not sitting here saying if you're walking through deconstruction, do not go to church, because that's the only way that you can find God is if you don't go to church. um,
Absolutely not.
but again, everybody's journey is different. Uh, everybody's hurt is different, and so, you know, maybe you've grown up in phenomenal churches, and because they're out there. I mean, you know, I
Yeah.
can't say that our church that we're going to now is perfect by any means, but it is a stark contrast from you know, like where we've been and everything. But um you know, like I said, everybody's journey is different, and so maybe you need to evaluate things differently, and you're doing something differently. So we, you know, we kind of went through the
Like,
ringer in
yeah.
ways, and really got to some pretty dark places.
Very dark.
uh and so I think the benefit there is that we can now be a voice and talk to people and have a lot of just compassion and empathy for people who are walking through this journey, because it's really hard if you have zero experience with any sort of dark night of the soul time period in your life, uh, to then be able to minister to people who are going through that,
Yeah, it's really true.
you
'Cause
know.
the people that would try to like encourage and there were some friends that like were great that they were there, but they were so uncomfortable because they had no idea.
Hmm.
Like they couldn't relate at all. And so like, I know I had friends who were like, I didn't know how to talk to you. It's not that I didn't want to.
Hmm.
And so like they would pull away because they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I don't like begrudge them or like, I'm not mad at them for that, but I'm grateful to be where we are so we can like put our hand out to people and go, we understand.
Yeah.
Like, we see you.
Hmm. Hmm. For sure.
So, yeah.
Yep. Yep. So, that's kind of, I think that's the big part of this that I want to share about my journey and stuff is just uh, how I, very much was like, if God does not exist, then now what does that mean for everything? It's like I had to reestablish morality and truth and life and all of that from the ground up. And it was, I think, good to really go through it because it forced me to look at some things in
Yeah.
life. It forced me to answer some questions and really, in ways, like establish um, where my heart was and what was valuable in life. Uh, and it kind of forced me into a position where it's like I had to choose one way or the other.
Yeah. There
If
was that whole Robert Frost tattoo,
Yeah,
the road less traveled. Like, you had to pick. You came to a fork in the road and
yeah,
you had to pick.
yeah.
There was
Because at the
no,
at the end of the day, I mean, and if you're listening, you may not believe this, but there's really only two pathways in life, and it really does boil down. It's in every single story throughout all of human history. You have light and dark, you have truth and lies, and those are your only two choices. And
yeah.
again, people may not agree with us, but you know,
And we probably wouldn't have agreed with you
no,
3 years
exactly,
ago.
yeah. And so again, like we're not in that way trying to speak to you and say you have to choose, but you may. It's more than likely if you are genuinely pursuing truth in this
You,
process and you want to actually figure out what truth is, that you're going to come to that fork. It
yes.
is inevitable, in my opinion. So,
Yeah. And I think that's where also we want to encourage people who aren't on the journey to not belittle or look down upon people on their journey.
yeah, yeah,
Because if they are wrestling, if they are fighting, and they haven't gotten to the fork yet, it doesn't mean they're on the wrong path. It
yeah,
doesn't mean that they're doing something bad. It just means they're still wrestling and walking.
yeah, yeah. I
And
mean,
God, if you believe what the Bible says of like, he who seeks shall find, and that God is like patient and kind and is, calling out to all, like, trust that process.
yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're listening and you believe that there's a million different options and a million different definitions of truth, like uh,
Keep pursuing.
yeah, keep pursuing, like follow that and see where you go, and people who maybe have friends or family or whatever that are there, you know have discussions with them and
Actually listen, and
yeah,
don't listen to correct and condemn. Listen out of curiosity and connection.
yeah, because the thing is, like, we can all trace back in a lot of ways to where we have that hurt and that pain that is kind of that put us on the journey to figuring out what truth is. And so, you know, have those discussions, get there, and that'll ultimately help people on that journey of truth and figuring out, like, okay, what do I, why do I feel this way, and what could possibly help me to uh, continue on that journey of discovering truth.
Yeah,
So,
and there were conversations along the way that definitely helped propel me and continue, like, either pulling or pushing me along.
mhm,
That they were patient, they were kind, they were curious, they didn't judge me.
yeah,
And I mean, it looked like people invited me to moms groups. It looked like, people patiently waiting for me to take bigger steps into the church we're a part of now. um, this sweet, slow pursuit, so I didn't spook,
yeah,
will be forever something I'm grateful for.
hmm,
Because I wasn't sure for a long time,
yeah,
and I went kicking and screaming some of the way.
yeah,
Um, but you do wild things for your kids. And
Yeah.
my kids wanted friends, and we found a community of people who accepted us and cared, and that changed everything.
Yeah.
And so if you know people who are in the journey, just accept them as they are. And it doesn't mean have no boundaries or
Or
allow them
compromise on what you believe to
your
be
own values. Like
truth. Yeah.
if you don't want certain things around your kids and they're partaking in certain things, like have a boundary. But like it's okay to be friends with someone you don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to love someone you don't agree with and align with. And in that, you don't know what you're doing. Like you, and I think as a former like missionary minded person, like sure I can be friends with someone if it's like almost like missionary dating, like I'm missionary friendshiping. But if it's someone who's in deconstruction, it feels weird because it's like, well, you used to run alongside me and now you're over here, and so you just end up disconnecting or making judgments on them.
Yeah.
And so if you can say, you know what, no, I still love you. I'm here. I'm excited to walk along that journey with you. Like you never know what it'll do.
Yeah.
Because like I said, there are friends now that I have that, and there are friends that came along the way that are probably the only reason I kept pursuing.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. 100%. All right. So talk a little bit about you.
Oh, geez. Yours is really long. Are we sure we can have time for this?
We got plenty. We're good. We got plenty of time.
Swimming in time. So for me, my messy middle that like what tripped me up a lot of the time was things that like I intuitively felt like I should do, but religiously was told I should not do. In a lot of different ways. So like if I how do I want to word this? So the new age and all of those things were big no-nos. Like, and I'm not saying go to psychic readings or any of those things, but I started kind of poking around in other practices after I like everything went away, because I was like, I have to have something to like bring me back to a center, if that makes sense. And so I would do things that I never in a million years thought I would do. Like I listened to books by more like guru-esque type people. And before I would have been like, oh, that's demonic. I can't listen to that voice. Like they're Satan inspired. But there were books. There was one by Eckhart Tolle who it's called The Power of Now. And it's mainly about meditation and self-awareness. And it revolutionized, and honestly is one of the things that got me to go back to the scripture, because I was like, okay, I'm going to meditate or dwell on these verses because I knew those were good and true. But it was a really hard thing for me to step into. And so I spent a lot of time like wrestling with, is this God? Is this not God? Do I, and with still that, like, do I even believe in God? And so a lot of my middle was me wrestling out, where is God in this? Is God in this? Because is God real? And I would find myself outside pacing in nature, talking to the earth, but to creation, and not to creation, I guess to the creator, but it would be like just communing with the world around me.
Yeah.
And it created a place for me to unwind and to I don't know, feel myself again, because I'd gotten so used to ignoring where I was, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And which led to me looking into like crystals. It led me to looking into like this one time when I had a kid who was melting down, and this was like one of the first times where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but just in my gut, I was like, I need to burn sage, because if you don't know what smudging is, it's a bundle of herbs, usually with sage, and it's supposed to remove spirits. You would see it like a shaman or a different things, but it's an energetic cleansing. And I was like, I really feel like I'm supposed to burn something. And then but I was praying. I was like, okay, God, but like, if this is bad, don't let me do it. But I really like, I couldn't shake it. And so I was like, I'm gonna try it. We didn't have sage, so I did a bay leaf. And I'm literally lighting it, going, am I going to hell for this? Like, am I about to like impart demons into my home? Like,
Yeah.
but the child who had been shut down, like locked state, wouldn't talk for a solid 2.5 hours. So I took a few deep breaths and talked, and like we moved on with our day. And I was like, wait a second, like what just happened? But the thing is, I didn't look to the bay leaf and go, oh, thank you, great bay leaf, like for saving the moment. Like it was like, God, I think that was you. Like I think you were the one that prompted me to do that. And people may be able to like just like in the past, I would have prayed over
Mm-hmm.
the situation. I would have, and like people talk about like putting on praise music and like but I wasn't in a place where I could do that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think because nature was God's design, and He put different things in to do certain things,
Mm-hmm.
like because I didn't have it within me, like within my own lungs, to fully pray out loud over my child or to turn on praise music and to deal with it that way. Like this was a way that I could.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that was God's way of being like, all right, let's utilize this other thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think like so we're gonna eventually dive into some of these things, like some of the new age and crystals and incense and sage and all these things, because it's like, so here's the thing. Here's what this is, scriptural truth and everything, that Satan can't create anything. He just corrupts stuff. Okay, and so the uh, you know we know that certain things can have effect on your body
Yeah.
when they're burned, like smoke, for example. I mean, we know tobacco has an effect on your body when you breathe it in.
Yep.
And so other things do as well. And so it's not necessarily that burning incense or sage is doing what the new age people will be saying it's doing, of like warding off evil spirits or something like that, but it could have other impacts in other ways that are a more natural and even like scientifically founded reason. So again, like I think
It is a big topic for probably another time.
yeah,
But
and ultimately I want to boil that down to say that like our approach has been to evaluate everything in ways like from a neutral standpoint and go, sage is not evil.
um,
And so what is, how do we approach all of these different topics and
well,
things?
and I think at the time, so I was on a phone call with my uncle one time asking him a question about something, and he was like, Lauren, you gotta be really careful. And he was telling me one of his stories about him, I mean, playing with a Ouija board, which is very different than like crystals or anything like that. And he was like, you just want to be really careful how you interact with things. It's like,
Yeah.
Uncle Matt, like this doesn't make me go, oh, great crystal, or oh, great sage. It makes me go, oh my gosh, like God knew, like the creator knew that when he designed this thing, that it would emit this frequency, which would create in this other creation over here, this propensity. And it was all like just interwoven, like great design. Like
Yeah.
the amount of intricacies that if we really start to like break everything down, it doesn't make me think this creation is so amazing. It is, but it points me back to the creator.
Yeah.
Like my awe gets turned towards the creator, not towards the thing.
Yeah, and so we're obviously going to be probably getting a lot of wonderful comments, but we're already stirring the pot big time here. Um, but again, it's like, first of all, God is the ruler of the universe, and he's not afraid of anything. Obviously,
No.
he's not concerned with the. I don't. Okay, so he's not intimidated by the works of the enemy, any of those kind of things, and in a lot of ways, like we shouldn't be either. And again, everything was created by God, and Satan has corrupted things. So what is that's why we want to approach stuff by asking that question. And
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, like there's things that um, are very very evil and have primarily evil intent. I mean, like human sacrifice, for example.
It's not a good one. No.
Yeah, and so that has become our approach, and obviously, like maybe a lot of people probably won't agree with some of what we have to say and all that kind of stuff, but that's okay because ultimately we know that we're pursuing God, we are pursuing truth, and there's a lot of stuff that just isn't in it's not in the Bible, and
And there's a lot of things that are in the Bible that Christians don't adhere to.
yeah, exactly. So it's very much it's a messy thing, and again, it's like hey, there you go, it's the messy middle. So
Here we are.
and again, we're not sitting here proclaiming to have it all figured out and have all the answers. We're having discussions like, why don't we talk about some of this stuff and go like, what is actually going on, what's real intent in it,
Yeah.
and open up the discussions about this to where it's not just like we immediately are like, oh well, everything, this is evil, this is not, this blah 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 blah, and really just be willing to have discussions and
have an ability to like go, oh, you know what, I was wrong on that. Like, who knows, in 5 years I may look back and be like, oh my gosh, like no, I would never want to use sage in my home or use like for burning, not for cooking.
It's delicious, so.
Yeah, it's needed for lots of meals. But like I may look back, but right now, where I am now, I don't have that. But it's been messy. It's been this like uncomfortable thing to wrestle with.
Yeah. And again, like this is a really difficult topic because it's very easily misconstrued. So, like I'm gonna kind of go back to how you were talking about meeting with God in nature, and when you're brought up with a specific viewpoint and a descriptor of God, like the big guy on the throne who's a little bit angry with you, whenever everything's rattling you, sometimes, and you've experienced a lot of pain from the people who are putting forth that picture and that vision of God, sometimes you can't just re-engage with that image of God that has been projected. I mean, to be honest, like for example, if a girl is raped by her father, it's going to be really hard for her to connect to Father God,
Yeah.
I mean, and not to say that like that's not truth, that is how he's described, that is his name, he is Abba Father in scripture, but like she is going to really struggle with making that connection. And so people viewing other characteristics of God and engaging there, I don't think is wrong. So, for Lauren,
it's been the
creator God who made this beautiful planet that we live on and that we're entrusted with stewarding, mind you.
Yep.
That's
been a like heightened responsibility, I feel like, in me since
that for her to meet God in nature, communing amongst the trees and all of that, and feeling his presence through that, it's not wrong. And it's not to say that she's worshiping creation, that she is talking to the trees, even though she may kind of be talking to the tree.
I mean, I think of
even the rocks cry out.
Even the rocks cry out, and like, and the trees clapping their hands, and like everything is crying out for the living God. Joseph Watson was a leader a teacher on our school in YWAM, more stories. But he would say he would go out into the woods and he would preach, the Son of God is here. Like, your redemption is coming to the forest.
Yeah.
And so, like, that was something I was taught like 15, 16 years ago.
But so like sometimes we need to, when we're in the questioning, and I don't want to say like we need to create our own picture of who we think God should be for us, but
maybe widen our viewfinder though.
Yeah, because
outside of the Western evangelical church. Like,
yeah, exactly. That, study
the characteristics of God.
Yeah, the characteristics of God, even from like a more Jewish viewpoint and all that kind of stuff. Because then, the vast number of names that, Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Jireh, all these different things, all these different names that God has for his different characteristics. I mean, that richness Elohim, that richness is lost in the Western evangelical church, I think, to a degree. And so maybe that's a good thing to do when you're in this questioning time, is really go, okay, like I want to reconnect with God, but this area and this viewpoint of God is really painful. And so maybe I look at a different aspect of God, or Jesus, or, the Holy Spirit as, a mother hen. And not to say that you're envisioning God as a mother hen, and that is God as a mother hen, but those are
the woman attribute of God. Maybe that's another conversation for another time.
But that sort of the pot enough today. But those are descriptors that have been used for God as a lot of different things, and so connect where.
And okay, so as a parent, do you care if the boys call you dad, daddy, Abba, like father, or do you want them just to call you
Sir, High Most Lord of all is preferred?
Is the preferred
one. No, exactly. I mean, we want our kids to connect to us, and it's not like we're gonna beat them over the head if they use the wrong term,
or their preferred term for their father. Like, I called my dad Papa before he became a Papa, and then he liked it so much he was like, "Can that be my grandfather name?" I was like, "Crap, I'm gonna start calling you Dad. It's weird to call you like," because that's the endearment process of a child. Like, we get to have that connection with our father, and then choose. Like, I have kids who call me mom and kids who call me mommy and mama. Like, but each kid, it's our connection.
Yeah, and then that's where, like, and this is, I don't want to like totally give permission to be just like coming in and out of like theological truth. At the same time, the reality is, when you're questioning, you're searching for truth, and so there's no condemnation to question that of, who is God, what is he really like, is he really how I was taught growing up as a kid, or is maybe he different? And it says those who seek will find. And we honestly, like, that was foundational
for the journey,
because for both of us, it was like, okay, if God is there, if he is who he says he is, we had like a confidence that we would ultimately
land the plane back with him.
Like, we would ultimately discover and come back to who he actually is,
or come to who he actually is. There's aspects. I think I knew him before.
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like it's a different knowing now.
But the lenses have shifted, because whenever you're looking through very much a lens of Western evangelical Christianity, like there's a lens and a perception of who God is. And if you're in a prosperity church, then God is the magic ATM in the sky. And if you're what's some like Seventh-day Adventist, which I don't know if that's like a full-blown,
I don't know what their thing is.
If you're a real hardline fundamental church where God is the mean lightning bolt thrower in the sky, like that's your lens. And so, sometimes, again, like, even our perception of God is rediscovered through the process of deconstruction, because there's a lot of really, really awful teachings and viewpoints of who God actually is. It's like, he's not up there waiting to smite us. He's not also up there just raining money down, you know?
Yeah, or being like, yeah, you get a free pass for doing that, and you get a
Yeah.
free pass. Like there's
Grace. You
yeah,
know, it's
and yes, His grace is sufficient, but
yeah.
at the same time, like He put
His
natural,
holiness is also 100% there too. So
yeah, and there's natural order that He put into the earth. So like when you sin, like it's not Him being like, I'm now gonna curse you.
yeah.
Like there's natural consequences
Yeah.
to our sins.
Yeah,
Like
even just that. Yeah.
like if
If you
we
go
miss,
sleep around, you might get an STD.
yeah, because it's natural consequence. If you gorge on food because you don't have self control, like
You
health
might be
issues,
unhealthy.
like will happen. Like there's, if you starve yourself because you have self loathing and you just choose not to,
You
there
might
are,
die.
well, like, yeah, but like there's health consequences. Like
Yeah.
there's, and it's not that God is mad at me and being like, well, because you didn't do that, this is like, it's just what naturally happens, because that's again that intricacy, how everything pulls
That
into
God
everything,
created.
and so it naturally does it.
Yeah.
And His grace is sufficient in the fact that like He can right some of the wrongs we do, but it doesn't give us a free pass to just be dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, you know, that really becomes a huge thing of figuring out who God is. And you know, I'll say like if we if you're in this journey and you really want, if you genuinely want to find truth, and you're at a point where that is your objective, and you're not trying to be like, okay, well, who do I want God to be? Because that would be like me looking at my wife and going, I don't, you know, we just got married, I don't know you fully,
Yeah.
but instead of trying to discover who she actually is, for me to then go, well, who do I want? Who are you for me? Who?
What did I envision my wife would look like
Yeah.
and be like?
And so then I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna like change this about you, and you have to get plastic surgery, and you have to do X, Y, Z, and you have to act this certain way. It's like I can't mold her, because ultimately, like even if we did all of those things, deep down, that's not her true identity.
Yep.
And so I can't do that with God. I can't go, well, I want, you know, what is my viewpoint of God? Who's God to me? And how do I see God?
That can go so many ways.
Yeah, I know, right? That's like a whole other.
Yeah, we won't go into that now, but when you're editing this, like, slap
Make
that,
notes, yeah.
that we need to dive in there. Okay,
Yeah, because
cool.
that's a good one.
Sorry.
But if you can't ask the question of who do I believe God is. It has to be, I want to know who God is.
Yeah, reveal, like, ask for Him to reveal Himself.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because we don't, you know,
what?
we ultimately don't get to decide that.
No, we don't. And the thing is, He is so faithful to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think if you truly, if you're nervous, if you're having that difficulty of like, well, I want God to be what I want Him to be. I think that if you actually were to truly let go of that and go, okay, like God, reveal who you actually are to me, you will be blown away and amazed at the fact that He actually is good and loving and kind and all of that, and the things that perhaps you've believed Him to be growing up are absolute lies, and that, you know, He isn't just up there waiting to smite you and whatever things you may have heard, but that He's truly good. And so like that's what we encourage people in the middle, when you're on that journey, when you don't know which way is up, is if you just let go fully and go, okay, God, like reveal who you really are. I think you'll be amazed, because the reality is we were there.
Yeah.
And no, it wasn't instant.
No, it wasn't instant. And there's stuff that like I know I'm still like even wrestling with, and like not the goodness of God, not the existence of God anymore, but like how am I to interact? Mm-hmm. What is my role?
Yeah, I mean, in ways, obviously, like, you know, issues of theology and all that kind of stuff. That I feel like that's a lifelong thing,
Yeah.
but really just the true core truth of God
Yeah.
that when you seek, you will find, and we can attest to that. And there's a lot of people that can, but it requires like letting go of yourself and wanting to make God what you want, but which is not it's not abnormal,
No.
especially whenever we've been through a lot, we've been through
It,
pain and all
it's
of
a
the realities of life.
self-protection
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And it's hard. We will not ever say it's easy, but it's worth it.
yeah.
The wrestling is worth it. The letting go is worth it, even when we want to just stop.
Yeah. Just be like, and we're done.
Yeah, we call it now. But yeah, it's worth it. It is good. Keep up, keep going. I think it's the biggest thing. Like, just keep going. And those who are supporting those who are going, like, curiosity, connection, patience, patience and kindness. Like, I don't know, actually live out the fruit of the Spirit. Love, peace, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. Like,
what an idea.
Actually embody those things, not shame and condemnation and judgment.
Yeah.
And you'll get to be witness to the beautiful story that's coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
100%. All right, so we will wrap it there.
Yeah, because it's long, this one.
Yeah, over an hour. Way to go.
I mean, it might not be once you edit a little bit.
Probably not, unless we just ramble for a while.
Oh, we could do that.
But we won't. So, well, we appreciate everybody who's listening, following along thus far in this journey of ours.
Please subscribe, share, all of the things.
Yes, and we're going to continue bringing this series, and then we have more stuff coming in the future. We're going to be talking about marriage and parenting and business, and we have so many things to say. And we're excited to have you join along. Please message us, comment. We want to hear your stories as well. We're thinking in the future it'd be great to have listeners we want to have people. We want to hear other people's stories in the future. We want to talk with other people in professions in the church, all across the board, and really open up that discussion. And we do want to bring people that know a lot more than us to engage in the conversation as well, because we are certainly not experts. No, we are experiencers. Yeah, we've experienced a lot. We've been through a lot. We are storytellers, I think, and that's one of the things that we want to facilitate is in our stories. That's how we heal. That's how we encounter God. I mean, that is what the Bible is. It's a big story. Yeah. And so that's what we bring. And then we want to bring some of the people that know a lot more about certain topics in here, so then we can discuss those a little bit more in detail. But that's going to be in the future. So for now, make sure you like it so we can do it in the future. Yeah. Okay? So, exactly. So, thank you so much for joining us, and we will be with you next week. Yep.